Inverness. The city offers a huge range of attractions and historical sites to draw in millions of tourists every year, from Loch Ness and the Caledonian Canal, ancient castles, museums and memorial sites, or hikes through Highland Glens. But for wildlife enthusiasts and tourists alike, Inverness offers a very unique experience: dolphin watching. I'm here to discover the relationship between the dolphins and the locals, the successes, the failures, and whether the future is going to go swimmingly or take a dive into murky depths. Scotland is famous for its landscapes and wildlife as much as its culture. Here, just outside of Inverness, the Moray Firth offers an experience unlike any other: the chance to spot bottlenose dolphins in their natural habitat, the wild. There are just under 200 bottlenose dolphins here, and although as a species they aren't endangered, the population in the Moray Firth is at risk from boat traffic and competition for food. But it's because these animals are playful, easy to spot, and not at all camera shy that caused over 120,000 visitors at one of the most popular spotting areas last year. The bottlenose dolphins can be found at key locations across the Moray Firth, and they are the highlight of many a Highland holiday. They can be spotted from the shore, or businesses do offer boat trips out for a closer experience. But as tourist numbers swell, maintaining the balance between conservation and profit becomes much more difficult to maintain. But that doesn't stop the WDC, which runs a busy visitor centre some distance from Inverness. Despite this, it's certainly a fitting location.
The history of Spey Bay is really interesting. It was a big salmon fishing station going back over 200 years, and in its heyday they used to catch over 1,000 fish a day here, so it's a really busy industry that employed lots of local people. Through the 20th century the salmon fishing declined through overfishing and there not being so many fish around, and eventually in the 1990s the fishing industry stopped working here. Then by the late 1990s an enterprising local couple took over the visitor centre, and they started to run it as a shop and a cafe and a place for people to see wildlife. Not long after that, the charity that I work for, Wayland Dolphin Conservation, got involved, and eventually they took over the running of the centre in 2004.
So what can people expect to see here in Spey Bay?
They can often see the dolphins here, and they're often doing some really interesting behaviour because they're feeding. So sometimes we see them catching fish, even throwing them up in the air. Dolphins often want the fish to come down head first because then the scales are going the right way. They might see them breaching, which is when they leap out of the water. Another behaviour you might see is spy hopping, and that's when they poke their head out of the water and have a really good look round. So dolphins actually have pretty good eyesight, so that's a way that they can kind of find out what's going on in the area. And another thing to look out for if you're ever out looking for whales and dolphins is feeding birds, because if there's lots of birds, seabirds pooling out there, that probably means there's fish around, and then there might be dolphins as well.
With no luck at Spey Bay, I head back to Inverness and a little bit further to the small village of North Keswick, where photographer Charlie Phillips is based. He's been photographing these mammals for over 20 years, and to him there is one dolphin that jumps out above the rest.
My favourite dolphin is the one that we see here in Keswick more often than not, and that's Keslet, ID 433. I've known her ever since she was tiny. She was born in 1994, and sadly she lost her mum when she was only 4 years old. But she, being part of the dolphin community, she survived okay with it, and she thrived, and she's a great character. She also has a son who was born 8 years ago, and Aberdeen University gave me the great honour of naming the dolphin after me, so he's called Charlie because we know he's a male.
Were you always interested in the dolphin population here?
I used to work for the Highland Council, which then was Ross and Cromarty District Council, and we opened up a very small visitor centre here at North Keswick called the Dolphin and Seal Centre. And the photographs of dolphins were few and far between, apart from the ones that were kindly supplied by Aberdeen University. So I went out and just started taking my own. And as I got better, my techniques got better, and my camera gear got better, the photographs began to show signs of promise as well. And quite soon people were asking to use them in magazines and sometimes in television programs as well. A couple of years ago I had the idea of eventually publishing my own book on these bottlenose dolphins, and luckily I found a wonderful publisher through in Elgin, Colin and Ina Nutt, and I happened to mention to them that I was thinking about doing a high quality coffee table style book on dolphins, and they said, can we help you? Now, to have a publisher saying, can I help you, is really quite special. And between Colin, Ina and myself, we've come up with a square format book, and it's almost sold out already, and it's not even been out a year.
Charlie's extensive experience has made him so familiar with the inhabitants of the Firth that he can identify them by sight. He works with the team from the University of Aberdeen to keep the database on the dolphins up to date.
I was round at what I laughingly call my office, Chanonry Point, and took a series of photos in nice light. One of the local dolphins that we have here, this is a female dolphin that we know as Zephyr. Her ID number is 866. But for instance, my picture there, she's actually beginning to dive, but if I rotated it slightly, you would see that the shape and size of the dorsal fin is exactly the same, and the little white marks that she has down the back are exactly the same. This is a different dolphin, again a female, and she's one of my favourites. We call her Squat Fin in this catalogue, but we've actually renamed her as Bonnie because Squat Fin's not a very nice name that rolls off the tongue, really. Bonnie's much nicer. And you can see the similarity right away. The small, dumpy, triangular type of dorsal fin. When you look at these dolphins for any length of time, you begin to notice genetic differences in them, especially the dorsal fin. Some of the dorsal fins on the dolphins are very tall and very pointy. Some of them are quite squat and triangular, like this young lady's here. Zephyr's happens to be quite recurved, it's got quite a curve on it. Keslet's is very similar, in fact hers is even more pronounced than that. Some of the male dolphins specifically end up with a terrible amount of scraping and scarring on them, and that's through fighting with each other. That's through battling for access to territory and also access to females, and also because some of them just don't like each other. There is Beatrice. Despite a female named Beatrice, it's actually named after the Beatrice oil field. So ID 907, there we are, absolute perfect match. All these scratches, the big bites, that's an absolute corker of an ID photograph. It cannot be another dolphin, it has to be that one. The chances of another dolphin having all these marks matching up is millions to one. It just wouldn't happen. So this is why the photographs that I take can feed into the overall scientific effort that's going on, mainly by Aberdeen University, but also St Andrews.
At his advice, I head to Charlie's other office, Chanonry Point, just outside the village of Fortrose on the Black Isle. It's here I'm hoping for my first glimpse of these Moray Firth dolphins. A degree of patience is needed when dolphin watching, because these are wild animals, and they don't turn up at a schedule. The show isn't on at 1 o'clock. It's very much a case of coming and waiting to see if they're here. I've been here for about 20 minutes or so, and all I've seen is inquisitive house sparrows and a couple of seagulls floating around. But it's very exposed. We do have a bit of Scottish sunshine, but it's a typical Scottish summer where it's not very warm, it's very windy, and it's very exposed out here at Chanonry Point. As you can see here, this is due to the location where Chanonry Point is. You can see off this point that this is where we are here, and we're right out in the middle of the Firth. This is actually what causes the dolphins to come here. So the water comes, as the tides change, the water comes through here, rushes here, and it sort of bottlenecks all the fish, all the salmon into this small area. And during the change of tides, the locals will tell you actually the best time to spot the dolphins is in the 2 hours before or the 2 hours after the change of tide, because this is where the fish are more likely to be, and thus where the dolphins are likely to be feeding as well. Buoyed on with my success at Shannery, I head further into the Black Isle to the village of Cromarty, where Eco Ventures is based. Here, Sarah runs dolphin boat trips. As the name suggests, Sarah is keen to look after the area that has kept her business afloat for just over a decade. But before I head out onto the open sea, it's time to get kitted out, as it's turning into quite a blustery day.
I had been sort of sailing and working for other people, doing similar sorts of things. Well, working the summer season here and then sailing various places in the winter. And an opportunity came up with Cromarty to set something up and to come back home. So, yeah, I set it up 11 years ago. And at that time, no one was operating a rent in the first. That was the first one I was made here. Part, I think, of what's important about what we do is educating people about what we have here and how important wildlife is, for everyone. And we're kind of ambassadors for that.
Whilst smaller boats can do little harm to the environment and only pose a threat if misused, the same cannot be said for the larger vessels. The huge tankers and fishing boats navigating back and forth from Inverness and the oil rigs dotted throughout Cromarty Firth are a greater risk due to the potential threat from oil spills. But the Invergordon Port Authority isn't about to let harm come to the ships, the Firth, nor the wildlife.
The Harbour Master has statutory authority over the movement of everything within the Firth. A statutory responsibility also includes the Conservancy. Now, the Conservancy of the Firth is primarily focused on protecting the stretch of water, the 17 miles of estuarial waterway over which we have jurisdiction. We have a speed limit for ships within the Firth, which is 8 knots. Now, 8 knots is probably just twice walking speed. So that's deemed a safe speed for 2 or 3 main reasons, primarily the safety of navigation. But again, as part of our Conservancy, we've identified that that's a safe speed for ships to enter and to leave the Firth and avoid any of the natural things like dolphins and porpoises. Not once have we ever witnessed, in 30 years we've been responsible for the pilotage, have we witnessed any marine mammal being struck by a moving ship.
The port is also responsible for dredging the Firth for the safety of the ships. Dredging is digging up the seabed to allow enough room for the ship's keels to pass through safely. The disposal of the dredging materials can cause another risk to wildlife within the Firth.
The dolphin population, which is often found at the suitors, is right where one of our disposal sites is. So understandably, we have to be very careful depositing large quantities of sediment and muds there. To do this, we utilised MMOs, which are marine mammal observers. They're often based on the vessels, though in our case we're able to do it from the shore. They would stand on the suitors and they would watch around the vessel, around the whole vessel, but if there was clear within 200 metres visual clearance, they would allow the disposal to take place. However, at night this doesn't work, obviously. So the Port of Cromarty Firth invested in a passive acoustic monitoring buoy, which is a hydrophone array, which is essentially an underwater microphone. The time taken for a sound to reach each microphone, for example, from a porpoise click or a dolphin click or whistle, allows the bearing of the dolphin to be calculated. So this would basically tell us where in the area the dolphins were, and it would allow us to then advise the dredging vessel if it was clear or not to dispose of this of the sediment, and thus preventing any casualties to the dolphins or any harm to the dolphins.
So tourists can spot dolphins across the Firth, from Cromarty to Shannery Point, from Spey Bay to Keswick Bridge. With a plethora of tour boats to choose from who look after the Firth and work to best practice for the dolphins they rely on. But that is good business sense, maintaining what the local economy relies on to survive. But what about the work done behind the scenes, the charities, the projects, the campaigns, to improve the Firth, not for personal gain, but the sole purpose of benefiting the dolphins and the wildlife within the Firth? Well, 20 years ago, the Moray Firth Partnership launched the Dolphin Space Programme, a voluntary code of conduct that applies to wildlife tour boat operators. It promotes responsible tourism by ensuring boat operators don't disturb or upset the dolphins by driving too close, too fast, or dangerously whilst near the mammals. But as a voluntary code, it's only effective if people sign up. But that isn't the only protection these animals enjoy.
An SAC it stands for Special Area of Conservation, and it's an EU designation, so it comes under the EU Habitats Directive. And what the Habitats Directive does is it identifies sort of critically important species and habitats all around Europe for protection. So in this area, the SAC was chosen for subtidal sandbanks and the dolphins. So the dolphins were chosen to be of European importance because they are not only the world's most northerly population of bottlenose dolphins, but the last remaining population in the North Sea.
This special area of conservation requires the dolphins to be researched and monitored. This is tasked by the Scottish Natural Heritage to a team in Cromarty Lighthouse Field Station from the University of Aberdeen. They have a special boat licence that allows them to get closer to the dolphins than commercial tour boats, so that they can monitor population numbers. I went along to speak to a member of the team who maintains the photo ID database. Barbara describes how the Moray Firth dolphins aren't like any other.
Bottlenose dolphins tend to be really a tropical species, and it's actually quite usual to find them in such cold water up here, so actually we think these are the most northerly resident population. So although you will get other bottlenose dolphins in the North Sea, these guys are quite resident to the area. So because of that cold water, they've had to adapt to that, so they're much longer. On average, they're anywhere between, the adults are anywhere between 3 and 4 metres long, whereas in the rest of the world they're probably more like 2.5 to 3 metres long, and they're much fatter, so you'll notice they're much bigger and bulkier, and they tend to be a little bit darker in colour, so people are used to maybe seeing bottlenose dolphins from Florida. They get a bit surprised when they see the animals up here because they do look a little bit different, although they're the same species. There's actually 3 main species we study here, so along with the bottlenose dolphins we actually do research on harbour seals and on northern fulmars, which are a seabird. But the bottlenose dolphin project, there's different aspects of that as well. So the photo ID is one of the main aspects, but we also do work on acoustics. So we have acoustic devices set around the Moray Firth. So photo ID is great because we can actually go out and recognise the individuals, but we can't be out there all the time. So the acoustic devices we can actually deploy, and we can leave out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it gives us a much better view of the distribution of the dolphins and where around the coast they are and how much time they spend in all those different areas. We actually use the photo ID in a process that's called mark recapture, because we can't actually go out and count every animal because they spend most of their times under the water, and also they travel over long distances. So we actually go out using the photo ID and then this mark recapture process to actually estimate how many animals are actually in the SAC and in the population as a whole. But we're always trying to add to that and give us more information about the population, and especially the health of the population, which is really important to know about. So what we've done is we've actually attached these 2 lasers to our camera, and they don't do any harm at all, but they're at a set distance apart. So when I take a photograph of the dolphins, the lasers actually shine on the body of the dolphin, and that actually gives us a scale on our photograph. And what we're able to do from that scale is actually measure the animals, so we know exactly how long they are. And then so for the calves, we can actually look at growth rates of the calves over time, which will give us an idea of how well they're doing. And again, as I say, we can monitor the health of the animals in the population. It's really nice, I think, for us that the dolphins have their own natural marks on them, so we can actually just be a relatively fair distance away from them. We're anywhere between 15 and 30 metres away from the animals, taking photographs of them, and we don't need to mark them or be intrusive in any way, which is really nice. The dolphins can do their own behaviours and get on with what they were going to do anyway, and we minimise, as I say, the disturbance to them as much as we can. It looks like the number of animals using the special area conservation has been stable over over 20 years. We've been doing this since 1989, and it looks like it's been stable since then. But the population as a whole, people might know, the population seems to have expanded their range down the coast, and you can even see them as far south as the Firth of Forth, and occasionally even further south than that. So the population as a whole, we think, is definitely is at least stable as well, but potentially increasing. So there's around 200 animals, we think, in the population now.
So technically, these pods aren't Moray Firth dolphins, but east coast of Scotland. But that doesn't matter to the WDC. Their priority is to protect whales and dolphins no matter where they swim, and they run a number of schemes to achieve this, sometimes relying on everyday dolphin watchers from across the country.
So ShoreWatch is our volunteer research programme, and we have 23 sites across the north of Scotland and the Western Isles of Scotland where people can come and do a training day. They learn about whales and dolphins and how to collect data on them, and then after that training day they can go and do a ShoreWatch for us, which is a 10-minute watch where they collect some data on any whales and dolphins that they see and then send us that data back in, and that's helping us build a picture around Scotland of what these creatures are doing.
The WDC also run the Adopt a Dolphin campaign and get their field officer, who else but Charlie Phillips, to provide updates for their blog and Twitter to keep members informed about their choice of dolphin.
I started off as a consultant for them, coming into contact with their members of staff up at the Dolphin Centre who would come in and would chat about things. Very soon word turned round about me maybe supplying them with information and possibly photographs. And then eventually I got a phone call saying, Charlie, could you possibly come down to Chippenham, down to head office for a week to visit us? And they basically said, right, we want you to be our man in Scotland, and that's a proper salaried position. So I looked, I can be quite mischievous every now and again, and I looked about, could I possibly be a field officer for the world's leading charity for whales and dolphins? Let me think about that. Yes. It didn't take long, because I believed in what they believed in, really. A world where every dolphin and whale is wild and free. So now I'm the field officer for the charity, but my main responsibility, if you like, is for the Adopt a Dolphin project. I'm the chap who gives the general public who support us the information about the dolphins that they've adopted. We have 6 local dolphins, Keslet happens to be one of them. And we have these 6 dolphins that the public can adopt, and the money that they give us actually supports the work that we do. And that a lot of that money goes towards helping these dolphins up in Scotland that we have here. The general public that come here wanting to see dolphins tend to know what they're doing. We do get some people that maybe come and maybe try using boats or kayaks or things that maybe not used in best practice. But we do have information streams all over the place, and we hope that the message is getting through. We very rarely have to phone police about anybody maybe trying to get in and swim with them or anything like that. But every now and again we do get a little bit of bad practice. But for the most part, the people that come up here know a little bit about wildlife anyway, and if they're looking for dolphins, then they know the best places to go and the best places to ask, or the best people to ask for advice.
And there you have it. The Moray Firth is home to the largest bottlenose dolphins and the only remaining pods in the North Sea. Their presence alone supports businesses and the local economy, and the charities across Scotland support and protect these mammals. They are observed from land or small boats, but in an unintrusive environment where they have the control. And that's what's important to the businesses and charities here, is the freedom these animals enjoy in their natural habitat, the Moray Firth.